We meet tonight in pride and in sadness for those who gave their lives for truth. Pride in their achievements, and of all of these people. In fact, they represent a kind of alphabet of valor and honor, from Aslam Ali to Jose Zamora, A to Z. It's fitting that we do this on the birthday of IPI. I'm present to say I was almost there at the birth. I think we should remember tonight as well those men and women who created the institution of the International Press Institute. Who would have thought that after the most devastating war in the planet, something could be built on the ashes of war comparable to what was built in Europe for prosperity, security, and freedom by those great institutions that we established from the United Nations on. And so we should remember those stalwarts from the IPI who were in at the founding: Lester Markell, Jim Rose, Tazi Vitacci, K.M. Matthew, Bervin Marie, Mokhtulubis, and Cecil Winkley Singh. Cynicism and despair might easily have been the legacy of the war, but it's right now that we look back not just on what they achieved, but what has been achieved by those who followed them, inspired by the same ideals. And of course, it would be understandable to feel a certain rage at what has been done to people. And despite our committees and our pledges, we know that people will still try to suppress free speech by murder and harassment. But rage is a sterile emotion. There's no amalgam of pride, sadness, and rage that is sufficient to honor and commemorate what has been done. Above all, we have to reflect on what was the common thread. What was the common thread among these people, among those men and women of such different cultures and backgrounds? What is it that we should remember them by? By those who died, who believed in the practice and profession of journalism. They didn't, most of them, expect to die for it. They may have been prudent, or they may have been reckless, or they may have been blind to the risks they ran, or they may have become inured to the brutality and constant threats. They may have practiced journalism with varying skills and purposefulness in print and broadcasting, and in the future the web. They may, being human, have erred. But nothing in the record diminishes the conviction I am sure I share with you tonight, that they believed theirs was an honorable craft, profession if you like, rooted in reason, dedicated to truth, sustained by the sense of the common good, given inspiration by the achievements of others around the world in a universal brotherhood. I think of my friend, my Turkish friend, Abdi İpekçi, who had lunch with me in London following an IPI Congress back in 1979. And he told me how much it meant to him in his battle against nationalism and terrorism and violence in Turkey. He was sustained by what you do, by what the International Press Institute does. And when I said goodbye to him, I, of course, had no idea that a few weeks later he would be gunned down by Agca, a crazy nationalist, who later tried to assassinate the Pope. Prime Minister Bülent Ecevit rightly said that the bullets which killed IPI were intended for Turkey's democracy and constitutional order. It's a tremendous shame, you know, that when Agco was released from prison, journalists all over the world wrote it up, but very few bothered to mention Abdi İpekçi, who died. And it's a shame that that happened, that when people run stories about the terrorist and forget to commemorate the hero who has been so inspiring. I think of the young reporter, editor, Serihuddin Hussain from the Dhaka Herald in Bangalore, who came to an IPA seminar I attended in the Philippines. He was moved by a talk by the investigative journalist Amitabh Chowdhury of Calcutta. He went home refreshed and inspired, did Serihuddin, and he exposed a beggars' gang that was taking children off the streets of Dhaka, taking them to a remote mountain hideout where they blinded them, cut off their legs and arms, and put them out as beggars' bait. Nobody believed Serihuddin when he told everybody something terrible was going on. Eventually they did, and they raided the camp and found these hundreds of children being mutilated. Serihuddin Hussain was murdered as an intellectual in the civil war that took place between East and West Pakistan, and his body thrown in a brick pit. Every one of the 60 names is a different story, but there is this common thread that tells us how we should honor them, how she should honor them, certainly with the plaques and medals and dinners and speeches. Mark Antony spoke too well when he said that the good men do is oft interred with their bones. We should see the good that our heroes did and are continuing to do, that they should live long after them. And as we celebrate the well-pressed heroes who are still alive and working with us, we should honor them by resolve and by rebuke, by the resolve to keep faith ourselves with their best aspirations and to be forthright in rebuking those who carelessly and ceaselessly do not stay true to the professions of responsible journalism. Every time a reporter slants the facts, writes a story to fit his preconception, every time he allows the unclouded face of truth to suffer wrong, he betrays a well-pressed hero. We should tell him that is an offense against us all. Every time a journalist anywhere foments sectional hatred, he shames the inspiration and example of Bosnia's Kemal Kuznovic, who's up there tonight, and I've apologized for my pronunciation ahead of time. Serbia's Veran Matic, Abdi İpekçi, Aslam Ali, Amira Hass in Israel. And I'd like also to mention Omar Balouche of Algeria and British Columbia's Tara Singh Haya, murdered because he believed in tolerance. Every time a journalist takes a bribe or his management accepts payment for counterfeit news, which happens a lot, he disgraces May Chidiak, blown up in Lebanon. He disgraces Syria's Nizar Nayouf, who endured such prolonged torture in one of Iran's worst prisons. He betrays Chile's Juan Pablo Cardenas, in prison for 541 nights, and Iran's Akbar Ganji, who endured 6 years, some of it in solitary confinement, and Jesus Blancornelas, who was fearlessly reported the Tijana drug ring and government corruption. And every time a journalist is harassed to reveal a source, he should reflect on the ordeals of Samo Savio Malifa, who never would yield. And every time a journalist indulges in cocaine, heroin, meth, the current poisons, he is an accomplice to the murder of Colombia's Guillermo Cano, one of our heroes. And every time a journalist invents a story, fabricates a quote, elevates a personal conviction over a professional curiosity, he betrays a dozen names on the roll. Every time a news organization puts excessive profit above excellence, it betrays every name we honor. Every time a journalist maliciously sets out to destroy a reputation, he dishonors all these heroes. And every time a journalist in a country with a free press, protected by law and tradition, abuses that freedom by personal vendetta or political manipulation or betrayal of something of national importance and security, he betrays all those around the world who struggle for half the freedoms and who seek to liberate from their tyrannies by saying, look at these examples, freedom works. They're all betrayed when a journalist in a free country does not live to the highest examples, as I think India's Arun Shourie did, whose success in the Supreme Court defending his exposure of the blinding of 33 prisoners enlarged the freedom of the press for the whole of Indian newspaper and journalists of all kinds. Every time a journalist joins the press pack, recycling rumor, trading in second-hand sources, accepting the easy feed, grossly invading privacy by telephone bugging, which has just been happening in London, as you may have read, he betrays the brave individual and every individual on the roll. And every time a photographer grossly exploits private grief, he betrays all the names on the honor list. And every time a journalist settles for half-truths and second best, he's diminished by the sacrifice who weren't satisfied till they got to the truth. Every time a news organization closes its eyes to the world, and I think of many television networks which have shut down their bureaus from the United States, it betrays all those on the roll who gave their lives in the course of letting us see. We should tell them so. And every time an editor yields to threats, he dishonors the memory of the people we've honored tonight and those who've died for it. And let's note, incidentally, how many of the people we have honored and will in future are women. Veronica Guerin, Anna Politkovskaya, May Shidiak. Let's note how many of these women are prominent in defense of freedom. Lawrence Binion wrote, "They shall not grow old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them. In the heat of our daily deadlines, in all the pressures of ambition and routine cynicism, let us remember our world-press heroes with pride, yes, but most of all, with resolve, the resolve to be true to the principles of the best journalism. In dedication, in fact, in Lincoln's words, to the unfinished work which they have thus so far nobly advanced, with increased devotion to that cause for which they gave the last full measure of their devotion. I salute them and all of you.